Good morning, everyone. Or it's the zoomed in version. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. It's morning coffee. It's Wednesday. Back to being the greatest dad. And with us is our very own Egyptian king, Rami, as always. Rami, what's happening, man? Good morning.
Good morning, Timuchin. Happy to be here like usual. Just excited. A little nervous for today, but definitely excited to be here.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
see, here are like good vibes right here. I have the same kind of like, we'll see what happens. Let's at least win kind of an attitude I had going into the Barcelona game. So
Yeah.
maybe that's
Never
a
know.
good omen. I don't know. I just don't have, especially with news coming out about Henderson and Basetic. Um, things don't look as good because I felt like Henderson was the key in this game.
Mhm.
So seeing that doesn't, but we'll get to that at the end and we'll do our preview and talk about the game. Yeah, it is nerve wracking. I can tell you were like kind of stressing out because the moment we connected prior to the show, he was like chugging down like a Gatorade bottle, like he was just working out or something like that. So he's so Rami's worked out for this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So this report finally comes out and it gets confirmed. So let's talk about this first, I guess. The Federation says, oh, he's eligible to coach still and is one of the candidates. And they flat out said they're not going to get somebody until like they get a sporting director, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't look like anything is going to happen until summer. Why? US must be the only national team that does this where the coaching job is a vacancy for like 3-4 months at a time. They did this the last time, I thought, too, where they waited forever. So first off, do you really think he's eligible, or is this like the soccer federation kind of covered in their ass saying like, oh yeah, he's a candidate now, that whole thing is gone, he was right?
Yeah, I think that might be more what it is. Just kind of covering their bases and just absolving him of that. Because it was kind of a sticky situation, and you don't want to ruin his reputation over just hearsay, like he said, she said. So I think it's fair to kind of give him that opportunity. But I would be very surprised if the U.S. brings him back as their coach. I just don't think he's for where they want to be. I don't think he's the guy who's going to take them there, and so if they have any wisdom, I guess you could say that I think they'll see that and just bring somebody who's a bit more qualified to lead the team.
But to be honest, if it wasn't for the story,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for this like drama overall, I don't think the federation was considering removing the guy. Like I don't think they saw what like the last World Cup and said this is a failure, we need somebody else. If this story doesn't come out, is it fair to say he's probably continuing the job and it's probably not even questioned much?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. It's hard
Not
to say because
fans. I know fans will
yeah.
question it. I mean, in the Discord channel
Mhm.
alone, he's been fired like 55 times. I'm saying more like for like in terms of the federation is concerned,
Mhm.
US soccer is concerned.
Right. And the only reason why I say I think so is because, like you said, I think the fan pressure would have eventually just gotten to the federation. If all the fans are unhappy with the choice, then eventually you don't have to listen to them, but eventually you kind of hear what they have to say. So I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm not convinced he's the guy to lead the men's national team forward. I think there's a lot of better options, a lot of better. You even have to look outside. There's a lot of good American coaches. Jesse March doesn't have a job right now. I'm sure he'd love to do it, stuff like that. So I think there's a ton of better options. And like you said, who knows? Maybe the federation kind of got bailed out by the story. So now instead of having to, fire him, they can be like, oh, okay, this was too much of a distraction. We're going to go in a different direction. So it could have been, blessing in disguise in that sense. But it's just kind of crazy. Like it just feels like these things happen at like the U9, U10 level. For it to be happening with the national team is just kind of like that's kind of crazy to me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Like the whole Reina part of it, it does
Mm-hmm.
sound like a U9 team, but it's still like in the national and like like the text and stuff going between. Like when you look at the report, some of the stuff. I mean, I didn't read the whole thing, but I saw like um kind of like huge parts of it like outlined. Yeah, like some of the text going back and forth is some of it is apparent venting. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. Like like I'm gonna go to Layla's game today. So let's say I feel like she shouldn't have been subbed out, or she was subbed out for too long. She doesn't need that much rest or something like that. And I text you and I'm like, Rami,
Mm-hmm.
this is bullshit, man. I like this guy doesn't know what he's doing. That's different, like that's me venting. But
Yeah.
when I'm like sending it to the school's dean or something like that, that becomes like a whole different story. And this is in the
Yeah.
national team stage. It's almost like surreal. If it was a movie, you'd be like, come on, man, this ain't U9, and you wouldn't like take it
Yeah.
seriously. So going back to the Berhalter, so let's finish that out first. Do you think, because like as I watch and like listen to other like pundits talk about this, do you think the incident that happens in his past, because that incident is now confirmed, like it did happen.
Yeah.
Yes, he was 18, he was drunk, blah blah blah, but it is still pretty brutal. And I don't know, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but when I see something like that, I almost feel like that's not the first time something like that happens. Like where you don't just go from zero to kicking your girlfriends in like one gear shift. It's kind of like a progressive thing, or it's continuous, and then next day you go to your non-kicking version, like no kicking anymore, honey, kind of a thing. So I think that's the part that disturbs me. That's probably an incident that was public. You would assume that there's like other stuff going on as well. You think that incident should have a bearing on the decision they make, like he has something like that in his past?
Right, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does. The only thing is kind of like, I don't say statute of limitations, but it was 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
that's kind of like, and he hasn't had any incidents since. And from what I can tell, his now wife, who was the girlfriend at the time,
Yeah.
only has good things to say. So like I said, I think people can make mistakes. This one was a big mistake, admittedly, but like I said, I don't think he should be condemned forever because of a mistake he made 30 years ago. And from what I could tell from the report is that he was trying to do what he can to make sure it was like an isolated incident. Like he took classes and like volunteered at the women's shelter, stuff like that. Not to say that that's like good enough, like that doesn't make up for what he did, but you can tell that he did feel remorse. And so I think that's kind of important too, just to kind of take that into context. But like I said, it doesn't excuse at all what he did. It just kind of more that like, I think it is like you're saying. I think if the national team federation wants an excuse not to bring him back, now they have one. I think that's probably the best way to look at it.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, they have a list of stuff now. So
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
the thing. So let's bring on this guy doing his best Alex impression, joining from the
Hey, yeah, sorry, I'm in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Illinois, so I had having some connection issues.
So we're talking about this whole Berhalter thing. And so let's go back to that, because like the stuff you listed there, Rami, is something like, like, and then he worked at the shelter. I mean, and that's the thing. I don't know, like, it's kind of like a hard point to judge. I just know, like, the counter stuff that's said about what happened way back. And I agree with you. I mean, this is something that happened a long time ago. People change and stuff like that. But like, oh, now it's his wife, and his wife is like very happy with him and stuff like that. You don't get a lot of like in abusive relationships, wives saying, yeah, he's a bitch, like it's horrible in this household and stuff. I'm sure she's already annoyed, aggravated, embarrassed, and stuff like that this came out in the first place because of the Reynas. So I'm sure she doesn't want to double down on it and be like, no, he still kicks me or anything like that. I mean, and like things might have changed, like you're saying. I mean, this is like 30 years ago. But do you think, Gordon, that should be something that they consider, forgetting the soccer stuff? Do you think that should be something saying, yeah, with something like that in your past, I think we're going to pass and go a different direction?
You would have to assume that you'd hope that the USSF like did their due diligence prior to this. Like, he's been in the organization for years. Both of them were part of the US team when it occurred. And it sounds like it was already dealt with internally at the time. So I don't think this was a shock to anyone inside. I think the U.S. Federation like did the right thing by, we're going to do an investigation. We're just going to, especially in this day and age, we're going to look into this. We're going to make sure that there isn't any ongoing situations. We're going to make sure that it was exactly the way that they had said it. But also, it didn't seem like they dug very hard. It's like, oh, they interviewed Danielle, and then they interviewed Greg, and then Claudio declined an interview, and Danielle said, I'll interview. And,
Claudio's like, I'm not here. Faithful. Just like...
So I think they handled it in terms of like for like public, public view. I think they did the right thing. Like, all right, we'll look into this again. I'm guarantee that before Greg was hired, everyone had already known about it. And again, it is a situation that's definitely embarrassing. I'm sure Greg's furious, especially because it all stems from this very childish, my son isn't playing for your team. It's just like, yeah, he missed like where you want your son to grow up and your daughter to grow up as someone who can A, handle adversity, and B, be able to overcome that adversity and in the face of it. And he didn't. He wasn't able to. And he then threw a fit about it. And then his parents threw a fit about it. If that was my kid, I'd be like, you need to shape up. You know, this is our friend who has been in the organization, and you are one of the stars or the hopeful star of this team in the future. And he doesn't think you're ready for this test. You need to shape up. Instead, they threw a fit for him with him. Like, that's the example. That's why he did it, because that's the example that he has and he's grown up with. So it's definitely extremely embarrassing for the U.S. men's national team. I'm glad they handled it very quickly because, you know, if this had hung over the team, you know, now we can talk about, like, it sounds like Gio Reyna's already practicing with the team. Greg's most likely going to come back as the manager. So
you think he's gonna be like, because we were talking about that, you think he's likely to come back? Because I kind of took that whole, and we were talking about Rami, and Rami took it as well, that's U.S. Federation covering their ass, saying he's still eligible, so that when they hire somebody else, you know, Berhalter can say, "Oh, you guys are not hiring me because of this." No, man, you were eligible. Like, we considered you.
That's a good question. The way that I took it was like he's already got the job. It's like we had to kind of put this on hold while we were looking into it. Yeah, I don't think he ever was not going to get the position. We'll see. I guess I don't know. We'll see how the results go, because you could argue that his tactics were not the greatest. And I mean, we were in a pretty challenging group. We ended up getting out of it. So we qualified for the first World Cup in 8 years, and we advanced out into the knockout stages. And, you know, we were never, even if the tactics were fantastic, we were never going to beat the Netherlands. So you could argue that, you know, he did as much as anyone could have hoped that the team did. But I'm just glad that now we've got 3 years to kind of talk this to death. But by the time, you know, everyone's ready to take the field when it's on home soil in 2026, we've already, you know, there isn't going to be any more like, oh, Gio Reyna is starting for the U.S. men's national team. Remember when his mom cried that he didn't play?
I mean, here's the weird thing. I mean, and yeah, you might be right. I mean, I guess that's a total different side of like what me and Rami were talking about earlier. Like, yeah, that could be that. They were like, hey, no, he already has the job. It was never in question. But we had to clean this up first. And now it's clean. Let's just move on, kind of a thing. And, you know, like, we talked to everyone involved except, you know, Reyna, who didn't pick up the phone. It's all resolved, kind of a deal. I guess that's possibility too. That is very likely. But okay, so let's get to Reyna. People, they don't give out these greatest dad mugs for nothing. So when your kid is, and I've had like 2 girls. Actually, Layla is still playing. She has like actually a game today. She's a senior in high school last year, which is kind of like sad, really. Like, as you watch these games now, it's kind of like the last time, because the college she's going to does not really have like a soccer team or anything like that. So, but when your kid is, so like, let's talk about the Reyna part of it. So what the parents did, and you know, they're like, oh, Gio does not have much to do with this, so he should not be punished because of what the parents did. So here's the thing. I think when your kids are younger, when they were like 6, 7, like we're talking U9, if something happened, you know, and I was never one of those parents, but I know there's a lot of them out there, right? Like sending emails saying like, why did she get subbed off, blah, 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 all that kind of shit. You might like email and say, hey, what does she have to do to get more playing time, blah, blah, blah. I mean, never had to, or, you know, had a good relationship with the coach where you would just kind of, you know, like chat around after the game or something like that, maybe, or like as they're warming up, like as they're walking by or whatever. As your kid gets older, I mean, you want your kid to address problems. So like after a certain age, I feel like, you know, like 14, 15, if your kid is complaining about something, you say, well, go and talk to the coach. You go and find out, and you go and talk to the coach. So this dude is freaking 20. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Jasmine is like, if I tried to intervene in anything Jasmine did, I'm assuming, and rightfully so, Jasmine would bitch slap me and saying, get out of my way because I'm an adult now. I mean, she might appreciate it, but she will not like it and she will not want it. So, Rami, where do you put Reina in this, especially if Berhalter doesn't get rehired? If he gets rehired, I think we're going into a scenario like Gordon is saying, where everybody kissed and made up. They're all back together now, like for the success of the team, blah, 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 and they move on. But if Berhalter doesn't come back, what kind of a message does it send when Reina is out there playing?
Right, and then you have this whole like favoritism thing, and it gets out of
hand. You have all the parents on their phone, like texting nonstop now. They're like, "How about my kid?"
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I was thinking about, I don't know if it's like a chicken and egg situation. Was it like Reina wasn't playing, so he texted his parents, was like, "Oh, I'm not playing. What can you guys do about this?" Or was it kind of like the other way around, where they saw he wasn't playing and then they took it into their own hands? It's like I said, I don't know. It's like chicken and egg kind of thing, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know which one's worse, because like you said, he's in the goal. He's playing in Dortmund in Germany, and if he can't handle his own business, and that's on him. It's kind of funny you mention, because I coach youth sports, and it's always the same thing. It's always the worst players on the team are always coming to you. Their parents are like, "Why isn't my son playing?" And I'm like, "Well, have you seen him play? That's probably why."
Next.
Yeah. And so it's just kind of hard dealing with that, because you gotta. And you always have to remind them, it's like, what are you doing to help them get better? Are you taking them to the gym or to the field to work on their game, whatever? And it's like they never want to take that accountability. And so, like I said, for you to see at the national team level is just crazy to me, because like I said, I thought this is what you deal with like 12 and 13-year-olds, not professional players. So yeah, it just crazy to me that this is still a thing. And yeah, like, who knows, like next time when during the World Cup, if he's not getting minutes, he's going to go blackmail the next coach, or who, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just going to be kind of this toxic situation. So I think the quicker they get this resolved, better. Maybe like a public apology from the Reinas or something might, make the situation better. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of very toxic situation right now. And I don't know. I wouldn't touch that with like a 10-foot pole, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the Reinas did not cooperate as much in the investigation as the Berhalter side, I think says a lot by itself, Gordon. It's almost like there's more to come out. There's more to be said. There's more they did behind the scenes. I mean, where do you stand on that? Like, if you are a teammate, especially maybe when Reina takes your spot, right? Or Reina has a bad game now. Is he not going to come out? There's a new coach going to be like, what did I do when I was 18? Like, he's going to look into his bag. So if Berhalter doesn't come back, how do they kind of make this whole Reina thing work? Regardless of how good of a player he is, that's like a really bad message to send, isn't it?
You do what you were saying your daughter would do. You just disassociate from your parents. You're like, that was fucking crazy. I can't believe they did that to me. Like, how embarrassing. And you're just like, I am not my parents. I'm 20 years old. And you'd have to imagine, because one of the things that came out in the report was that for the last 10, 15 years, Claudio has been trying to infiltrate different positions within the organization to benefit his own child. So, but he made it to Dortmund. So I can't imagine that Claudio has the same kind of, I think we played the San Jose Earthquakes. I don't think he had the same, he doesn't have the same weight in Europe for Dortmund to get his son to play. So I don't think he was doing that at that level. So he's obviously got some natural talent. He can't step in the way that he can in the U.S. men's national team for his son. So there is something there. You just disassociate. You let your feet do the talking, which is what really happened. I mean, it was kind of embarrassing for Gio, because Greg came out in that leadership conference and did the most unleadership thing and told a personal story that he said would never leave the locker room. And Gio came out and he's like, that was hurtful. I thought we internalized it. I thought I apologized. It was told, like, he always tells us that everything that happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. And I was upset by it. And I thought that was it. It's like egg on Greg's face, and we can all move on from this. And it's pretty disappointing to do to your player, especially at just the most oxymoronic thing to do at a leadership conference. And then all this other stuff, then his parents started talking up, and then it's like, all right, now you took a situation that seemed to be handled, and Greg Berhalter was the one that should be embarrassed. And now everyone's just forgotten about that part of everything coming out. So I think for the player, he's just got to let his performances do the talking, because I think the longer he goes with bad performances for the U.S. men's national team, the more this stays a story. If he goes out scores 3 goals, or even like assists a couple of times, or just puts in a really good shift, and he does that 3 games in a row with the United States shirt on, it's over. No one's going to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I think performances will make it, forgotten. I think that's the part I don't understand, why he wouldn't come out a lot earlier and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, my parents are like being idiots. Let's face it. If Reina is my kid and Reina's kid has a lot better shot at making the Dortmund than my kid. So I am sure like it has pushed him along the way. I mean, it's not just genes. There's more to it. But, I mean, the kid is good. And he's at Dortmund, like, playing and stuff. So it's not like, like you were at that to, like, your parents are carrying you across or anything like that. So that's the part that I find confusing. And at the same time, him not coming out and saying, hey, yeah, like, my parents are just being ridiculous. I know what I have to work on. He could have probably made life a lot easier, too. And, I mean, here's the thing. But when you have parents like that, you're 20 years old. And obviously, if they're still doing it at this level for 20 years old, they've been doing it for the last 20 full years. So a kid like that, more than likely, first of all, their parents don't have a mug like this. And 2, the kid probably is pretty self-entitled at this point, just by, how things have gone for the last 20 years. You're like, Dad. And then, like, they're like, I'm texting, son. Hold on. It's like, so that's I don't know if that's kind of built into him as well. And now this is getting dangerous because Bickler says one interview and he could have my WordPress credential and my dad. Dude, take the WordPress credentials. Why do you need my dad pants? That's the question. By the way, a PSA for all those listening out there. If you're in the Seattle area, keep your head on a swivel because there's a Bickler sighting in your area in Seattle. So make sure you guys watch your ass. Keep your head on a swivel, guy. Watch your dad pants, apparently, most of all. But yeah, I just feel like, like he should have, as a 20-year-old, you're not a kid anymore. I know we're a lot older now. So it's a kid to us. And yeah, there's a lot to learn. But at 20 years out, at 20 years old, especially at this level, Rami, you played a ton of soccer. You played a ton of professional soccer. You're getting paid a lot of money to play soccer. So you are at an above level than a kid that's a junior in college.
Right. Yeah, no, and what I'd be curious to find out is like what his Dortmund teammates think of him. Like, do they, like you kind of mentioned it earlier, are they texting? I don't remember who the Dortmund coach is, but like, are they texting him too and being like, why isn't Reina playing? Why isn't Gio playing? I don't think it would work as well. They don't have the same pool that they would with the national team. So yeah, and then, but like I said, I wonder what his teammates think. Are they like, oh, he's a good teammate, he practices hard, stuff like that, he trains hard? Because that's the real question. Is it just like a national team issue, or is it just a Gio Reyna issue at the end of the day? And I think once you kind of can identify that, then you can kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. Is like, oh, is it a Berhalter issue? Is it a Reyna issue? I think once you kind of can limit those things down, then you can kind of make the right decision from there. But it just a very odd and weird situation. And to be honest, like I said, I've never really heard about anything like this before. So it's kind of funny just to talk about at the end of the day.
Yeah, so quick predictions over here. Does Berhalter come back? I mean, it almost sounds like Reyna is going to come back because he's too valuable in terms of quality and he's a young kid, so he will definitely come back. And I think they're trying, US Federation especially is trying its best to distance him from the investigation so that he doesn't get affected. But I think the waters have been muddied already. I don't think that's possible. But so Gordon, you think Berhalter comes back?
Yeah, I think it'd be really unfair not to bring him back. Like I said, I mean, he qualified for a World Cup, something that we missed out on last time. It was a little closer, I think, than a lot of people were hoping for. But we got through a pretty difficult group in terms of like where you expect like Wales and England to have finished in that group. We did the business. We got through. We played a Netherlands team we were never going to touch, even if our tactics were perfect. So I think it'd be unfair. I think you got to let him go for it again and see what he does in CONCACAF and the Gold Cup and all that good stuff that is upcoming for the U.S. men's national team, and let him fail there. And then we could look for somebody else. Because the other thing is, when you put his resume on hold and you put his career on hold, and you brought in someone that no one's ever heard of before, you would you would think at such a high level, especially with the tournament being on U.S. soil the next tournament in 2026, you'd want to find the right person. This isn't, when we didn't make the World Cup and we hired Greg, everyone was like, who the hell is this guy? But like, that's the kind of move you make because you're at the bottom floor. You got to work your way back up. Now we showed what we could do. We advanced in the group stages. We played, we didn't get played off the pitch by the Netherlands. It wasn't, I think the 3-0 was a little unfair scoreline to us. In terms of the actual golf and class between the Netherlands and the U.S. And the youth showed themselves really well. So I think it's really positive in it. Unless you have somebody already in mind, which clearly it looks like they don't, I don't think you can afford to get rid of Greg because I think right now he's the best man for the job.
Does it hurt him that there are not really, if he does come back, does it hurt the whole like drama not going away for good? Because there's really not a lot of meaningful games. Like if there was they're already qualified, so there's not going to be any qualification games, and so essentially 80% of the games you're going to play, 90% of the games you're going to play are going to be friendlies, so you can always be like, we're testing this guy out, we're testing that guy out. Does that make it more difficult?
Well, I think weren't we invited to Common Bowl to play we were like the invitee this year to play against like Argentina and Brazil. And I think that's going to be immensely important for us because like you said, there's not going to be that fire of like needing to qualify because you already have qualified. So I think those games are going to be massively important. Again, I think that the Reynas opening their mouths helps Greg more than anything because I think if that doesn't happen and it ends with Gio saying, I was really disappointed that he did that to me, then that disrupts the locker room because it's like, all right, this guy's got a blabby mouth. Now everyone's forgotten about that part. And I think Greg can step back in there and he's kind of dodged a bullet, so to speak, because I think that would be the big talking point is like, can anyone trust Greg to keep his mouth shut if he gets paid to speak at a conference?
And this one time, Bickler says, I mean, basically, I agree. The accusation that they incentivize playing Major League Soccer players is alarming. I mean, that is a thing, and this kind of like stuff happens. You usually see this in, I don't know, like the Nigerian national team and stuff like that, where there's a huge thing between players who play in Europe and players who play locally, or players who are on the side of the government and stuff like that. I have like a lot of friends like that I worked with when I was in the city in Chicago, and they would tell me all these crazy stories about this is why this guy is not playing because he, voted for this guy, all that. Like you don't expect it to be where you feel like there's so much more foundation and stuff like that for soccer development here, Rami, that you expect a lot of this table managing not happening, most of the stuff happening on the pitch with like a professional coach and sporting director and stuff like that. So what is your prediction for Berhalter? Does he come back? And if he does come back, does the same question to you, the fact that there are no meaningful games for the most part, does this mean, like Gordon was saying, we're going to talk about this for like 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, I personally don't think so. I think I get what Gordo's saying about, he did the best that he really could. But I think when you look at the fan pressure and kind of the fan reaction to even just him staying, I think that might be enough for the federation to be like, okay, let's move in a different direction. Because you have to question whether he's the guy that's going to take that next step. Yeah, he can be the guy to get you out of the group stages and maybe even win a game in the knockout rounds. But is he going to be the guy to get you to the semifinals or even the finals? And I'm not sure that he is. Which I think is what the U.S. should.
Is there a guy like that though?
I don't think so. Like right now with this roster, I think that's what you need to aspire to. Like if the United States wants to get to where they want to be, I think that should be their goal at the end of the day. But my prediction is I think they're going to hire like a big name, like a Jose Mourinho or like Thierry Henry or something like that, where it's like a recognizable name where it just appeases the fans, where it's like, oh no, look, we got rid of Greg and we brought in this guy that you guys all know. And I don't know if that's the right decision, to be honest. I think that might be a bit of a step back in the sense that it's like the U.S. is just the U.S. soccer is kind of like this gimmick thing at the end of the day. And so it could be a step back, but I totally wouldn't be surprised if they go hire Jesse Marsch or somebody, like I said, with that name recognizability so that just to appease some fans after the whole Berhalter situation this past winter.
I want to be in the room when they're telling Mourinho, "Hey, this guy has to play because he's in the Major League Soccer." I want to be in the room to hear that conversation, and I think that's the problem we get to, like all this like table managements and like scheming behind the scenes is not going to happen with an actual professional coach that's been there, done that. So you almost had to bring a guy like Berhalter where you can pull some of the strings, because Mourinho is going to be like, take those strings and shove it up your butt, and he's going to, and not to mention he's going to throw you under the bus, and everybody's going to listen to him. I think, a guy like Berhalter does not have, and I don't know, that's why I don't know how big of a name they would bring, and I don't even know if a big name does take this team, kind of like what Gordo was saying. I mean, you look at the squads at the end of the day, and I know there's a lot of like young talent, and they could have definitely played better, more attack and all that kind of stuff. But when you go against the Netherlands and the Brazil and Argentina and stuff like that, you got to set the expectations accordingly as well at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, you need a good coach to be able to get the most out and put a good fight against those teams as well. Speaking of needing a good coach to put up a fight, come up with an 11 against Real today. So with both these guys missing, Henderson and Besetic, who is going to play in midfield? I can't, because I'm going to be at Layla's game. So I don't know if any of you guys are available, but Gordo, what do you expect out of today's game, especially with this lineup? You should cover this, though, by the way. Rami knows. So now everybody is doing this, Rami, where they're doing the FIFA predictions. And to be fair, they nailed that game on 2-0 on Liverpool Echo. But now LiverpoolFC.com did a FIFA simulation. And I am sadly reporting that they lost 1-0. We lose 1-0 to Real. Vinicius scores the goal. So there you go. I just saved your afternoon. You don't have to watch the game. But Gordo, what do you expect to see today, especially in that midfield? Alan says Milner, Fabinho, and Elliott, which sounds actually very realistic. But what do you think?
That's definitely realistic, and that's definitely either a 0-0 or a 2-0 loss, because I don't think that's more of a let's keep what we have, which is 0-0. So but you saw like this weekend, I know that Henderson just isn't fit this year, but you saw at the weekend him missing in midfield. I mean, those Elliott and Besiktas are too young to be put with a Fabinho whose head is still I don't know where it is, but hopefully he finds it, but he's just not he's just not there. So I think we saw that, while they're both very talented players, they're still just too immature at this point to be put with someone who's not totally on his game. And when Henderson was playing against United, you could see the difference in the whole team. So there's just somebody else in there. So I think that's a major loss. I think, where did we lose the game in the first leg was the midfield. I mean, we couldn't find the guys up top. It wasn't that they weren't producing. It's just we just couldn't get the ball to them. And we got them every once in a while on a quick break and a cross. I mean, we're very fortunate to have Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who can every once in a while influence the game after being quiet for 10, 15 minutes. But I'm not really hopeful when I saw that news today. So fingers crossed.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I always say I really feel like this midfield goes as far as Henderson can take him, especially in the attacking sense. You need Fab to have a solid game to stop counters and all that kind of stuff, keep possession. But in terms of movement of the ball and getting some creativity going, and not, everybody says, when you look at creativity in terms of like Thiago trying to thread through a pass or whatever, but the way like Hendo moves the ball, switches like fields and stuff like that is what you need. Not to mention, he kind of brings that attitude when he's out there, when we're pressing and stuff like that. Rami, what do you expect to see today? And who do you expect to start in midfield? I'm assuming, we're all set on the back four. So let's talk midfield, and then we'll go to the front three.
Yeah, I think the Milner, Fabinho, Elliott is a good shout. I wouldn't, be against of just going a double pivot, Milner and Fabinho, and then having 4 forwards start. I mean, we need 3 goals anyways, so why not? But I kind of agree about the Henderson thing. It's like it's going to be an emotional game either way. But especially if we start to like maybe get a goal or two, you kind of need that leadership out there just to be that steady hand, especially in the midfield. So that's what kind of concerns me is the Henderson more than Bajcetic, because yeah, Bajcetic is a good option to have, but Henderson's leadership is going to be a miss. But like I said, since we don't really have a ton of options, I would be totally against just putting 4 forwards out there and just totally going for it. Like, let's try to win this game. We already basically lost it anyways. Let's try to get something out of it. I would say this though. I hope Henderson or Mo Salah let Henderson borrow his never give up shirt, and he comes out with that. I started to get some Barcelona vibes, and but yeah, no, it's just kind of concerning. The midfield's been an issue all season, and the fact that even now Naby Keita can't get a game. With everybody, basically dead and buried, that he still can't even get a game, and 38-year-old James Milner starting over him, and Arthur and Ox and all these other guys who I know they're probably leaving at the end of the season, but still can't even get minutes. So that's probably like the sad part for me, is just like the fact we still need to rely on either a 19-year-old or a 38-year-old. That there's no in between, and so yeah, that's the frustrating part. But I don't know. I'm going with complete blind optimism. I'm like, we're going to win. Don't tell me otherwise. I think we're going to win 4-0, and it's going to be Milner hat trick, perfect hat trick, and all of this stuff. But it's just this delusion that I'm convincing myself, when in reality, that's probably not going to happen. So.
Alan says, I would not make Virgil captain for this game. It's clearly affecting his game. I mean, yeah, Virgil has other issues to kind of like focus on to get him back to himself. I don't think we've ever had the same Virgil back ever since the injury. You get glimpses of him, and I think having Konate next to him helps a little bit, but it still feels like they were a more cohesive duo when we had that run with him and Gomez back there, as opposed to him and Konate back there. It will hopefully happen over time, but in terms of being cohesive, setting that line together and stuff like that, I think they still got some work to do. But Konate is definitely the future in that center back position to probably take over that role as the leading center back anyway. But yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. Does it help though, Gordo, that there's really nothing to lose? Kind of like similar to the Barcelona game. Like, not only like we're missing Henderson and Bajcetic today, that day we're missing Mo and Bobby. So many parallels.
I would actually say that not having Mo and Bobby is probably a lot bigger of a mountain to climb. But yeah, I joked because I saw people like, how can the weekend, how could they do this to us after 7-0? I was like, you have not been watching long enough. It was very early, the 12:30 game away from home to a relegation battle side that Liverpool would lose or tie every single season. Even the seasons we were kicking ass, that would be the result. 3 years ago, that would have been the result. 1-0 Bournemouth or 1-1. Mo makes that penalty. Everyone would have been pissed. Why didn't we pick up points here? We could never play the 12:30 games, even at our best. So that did not surprise me at all. I'm actually glad it happened, because let's say we pulled off another 2-0 victory against Bournemouth. I mean, that's 6 on the bounce, clean sheets, winning those games. Obviously, we tied 0-0 to Palace, but the clean sheets feel good. And then you go into this, you totally forget that we just got trounced 5-2 by the same team, and you go into the Bernabeu and you just get manhandled. So I think it was a great start to the training week of, all right, back to basics. Like, we still are the team that we have been all season. There's nothing new. We didn't find any form. We just kind of, we're starting to put things together, and we managed to get some results out of it, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I think that benefits. And like you said, not having anything to play for, like, really like pulling off the impossible. I mean, the pressure really is on Real Madrid to produce the exact same performance that they put on in the first. Because if they don't, even if it is 2-0 Liverpool, this one finishes and Real Madrid go through, it's still kind of embarrassing, like, oh, a team that we beat at their home so comfortably in the second half, we now lose to them at our home. So I think that kind of is the motivation for me, that like, maybe we can get some out of this. I'm honestly, even a 1-1 or 0-0 and we put in a good performance and we don't let them push us around, that's enough for me, because the way this season is going, I think that's all we can hope for.
That bar is getting lower and lower. But
Yeah, I'm the opposite of Rami. I'm like, it's gonna be a nightmare. And so when it's not a nightmare, then I'm like, oh, I can live with this. But when it is, I can convince myself that that's what I knew would happen, and I could go about my day without, pulling a Greg
no
Burrows.
disappointment. I think one of the things that's going for us is the fact that Real could go out there just to, let's get this 90 out of the way and go to the next rounds, while somehow, and I still feel like that's an indictment on the players and the coaching staff as well, that, when the team is up for a game, they play totally different. I'm sure they were embarrassed in the first game, so this is a chance for them to make a right, blah, blah, blah. That's why I feel like Henderson not being there is a huge loss, actually, because he would be the trigger to that whole thing and, kind of accelerate the whole process. But will that, at the end of the day, Rami, is prediction time. Call it 4 forwards, 6 forwards. I don't care who you start. How does this game going to end?
4-1 to Liverpool. We win on penalties. That's my prediction.
Oh,
that's maybe my hope.
Shit, dude. If this happens, I swear.
Yeah, no. Seriously though, I think Gordo's spot on. I think it's gonna be very cagey. I think it's gonna be like 1-1 or.
No, man, I like the fucking 4-1. Why'd you back out of that?
Hey, man. Actually, no. You know what? I'm gonna stick with that because if I'm right, I'm gonna work like a genius.
I like that.
So yeah, 4-1 to Liverpool.
Because I know this guy is not going that route. So at least we need somebody out there saying he's going to be 4-1, so it evens itself out. Gordo, what do you have?
I like the 4 forwards, and maybe not so blatant as like 4 across the line, but like a diamond. I've been calling for let's just do a different setup, and maybe having Jota off the shoulder, having Darwin just up by himself, or even Mo up by himself, and then Gakpo and Nunes on either side of him, and just we need the goals. Let's do it. So I saw another simulation, but it was just some guy that was angry on YouTube, and he beat Real Madrid 12-1, and I'm pretty sure Nunes had 4 hat tricks. So and Haaland scored 5 yesterday, so let's do a hat trick in each half. Let's go for it. But no, I think 1-0 Liverpool. I really do. I think we bring it to them, and I think Real Madrid probably in second gear this whole game. They don't need the win, and I think Liverpool definitely need the confidence boost. And I think they were embarrassed at the weekend and trying to find some of that Man United form and take it to them. So I think we get a goal in and we end up winning the game, which is as much as I can hope for.
Yeah, Alan says 2-2. Bickler says Casillas making a miraculous comeback and then losing. The teammates a good time. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I like the 2-2, 1-1. I just see a draw coming out of this where maybe we get one and then they crush the dreams afterwards. But I think the key is going to be if we get an early goal, how do the teams respond to that? Does Real say, oh, shit, I guess we're going to have to play? Or they never recover from that because it's kind of hard to change gears. But if anybody can change those gears mid-game, it's Real. And I think that's the biggest thing compared to the whole Barcelona thing. We are not ourselves. Barcelona is not Real Madrid. And their players have are mentally a lot stronger, a lot more experienced than what Barcelona had coming to Anfield. They were just shell-shocked and had no idea. Whereas these guys are going to be home, so I don't see that happening. But there's always hope. But I think my prediction is a draw too, but you never know. We might come back. Well, actually, tomorrow night on the podcast, Mecca and them can be talking about this Barcelona, second edition, Barcelona 2 or whatever it's going to be, Fast and Furious 55. But yeah, let's see what happens. Let's hope for the best. I'm kind of with Gord over here, kind of watching with let's hope it's not too embarrassing. Let's get something out of it mode. But guys, thanks a lot as always. Thanks to all those commenting, joining us this morning. We will be back tomorrow night, Mecca and the gang, and then the fantasy nerds following their show, giving you those fantasy tips that I probably could have used 2 months ago. I'm still studying Cancelo. I really feel like he's going to come through at the end. But, you just got to have faith. You just got to have faith in this fantasy game. Thanks a lot, guys, as always. Thanks to you guys. Let's enjoy the game. You never know. Let's hope for